Hello everyone, my name is Laura and I'm the Special Events Manager here at the charity. I'm also a mental health first aider and a member of our staff group. And looking after my well-being and those around me is so important, both inside and outside the workplace, especially in the current world we all live in, where there is so much unrest and uncertainty. And even though we are so fortunate in many ways, the demands of everyday life can still feel impossible to achieve at times, and we can forget just how much things can be affecting us, and to make time to check in with ourselves and with others. Something the world always needs more of, though, is kindness, which is what our next session looks at, with kindness being at the top of the agenda. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Sarah Ashley from Baringa, who will be discussing just how kindness can benefit us all and build safe and trusted environments. Trisha Hayes, former second permanent secretary at the Home Office and a civil servant for over 30 years, also shares what kindness means to her and the value it brings. Enjoy watching, and thank you so much for being part of the conference with us this week. Take care.
And welcome to the Baringa session on the value of kindness. We're delighted to be here today at your conference. I'm Sarah Ashley and I lead the government and public sector in Baringa. I've worked with government clients over 20 years and love the complexity of your problems, the impact that they have. So it's great to be here talking to you today. And I'll also be hosting the Q&A at the end of the session, so I hope that you stick around. I'm not here on my own today. I'm coming live from the Baringa studios, where I'm joined by our managing partner, Adrian Betteridge. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for inviting me to join you. I'm delighted to introduce myself. My name is Adrian Betteridge. I'm the managing partner of Baringa. I've been in consulting for the last 31 years and love working with our clients to help them transform their organisations, helping them improve performance, introduce new products and strategy, and respond to the challenges that those organisations face. For those of you who don't know much about Baringa, let me introduce the firm. Baringa has about 2,000 people around the world. We are operating out of 12 countries with 18 offices. We work in 6 sectors, but here in the UK, we have a strong UK government practice and work for the public sector across all different departments. We're delighted to have been in the top 10 of the great places to work for the last 17 years in a row. So the topic of kindness has been a real key important part of our strategy of how we've built our business, not just for our employees, but also the way in which we like to show up and work with our clients. That's resulted in lots of the work we do with our clients is people who've worked with us before repeat buying our services to support them on their organisational strategy and change. So 80% of our work last year was from those who've worked with us before. So we've seen the impact of getting this culture of kindness right inside our business practices. I'm delighted to share this research and these findings with you today and look forward to getting into a little bit more detail about why the economics of kindness is so central to our strategy and why we believe it's important for all organisations to get this right.
Thanks, Adrian. I think it's really interesting to just explain a bit about why we looked at the economics of kindness. Adrian explained how it was really important to our strategy in Baringa, how we operated with each other and how we operated with our clients. What we thought was that there might be an opportunity that kindness was playing a great role in society. Now, we're in the business of delivering impact that lasts with our clients, and putting people first was a key component of our strategy. Did this work beyond Baringa? We knew it worked with our clients, but did it work in organisations where we weren't there? So we wanted to go and see the real economic value of kindness. The first thing we had to do was define kindness. And of course, there are many definitions. We looked at the dictionary definition, we spoke to our colleagues, and we spoke to our clients. And the definition we landed on was, it was ensuring everyone has a voice. It was about being honest and saying the hard truths and tackling the tough challenges head on. You'll see from that, it wasn't about being nice. It had some real grit to it in our definition. And it was important for us because it was about building the trust needed at every stage to ensure the right things are being done and that create positive impact that lasts. So once we had our definition, we wanted to go out and measure the impact of that. And to do that, we conducted some independent research by an independent marketing firm. who went out and spoke to consumers across the world for us, across all of our different markets. We also supplemented that research with interviews with investors, with academics, with people in the public sector such as yourselves, as well as all of our clients that we worked with and prospective clients. So what we felt we had was a really strong set of both data from independent research and qualitative data from a range of experts on the subject. And now we're delighted to share with you what our research said to us. We've got a number of different findings which we will take you through and share some examples from. And I look forward to, again, to hearing some of your questions about those findings and whether they resonated with you as you hear them today.
Thanks, Sarah. So we've finished that research and we've got 5 key findings that we want to share with you today, because we'd like to share with you why we believe putting kindness at the heart of an organisational strategy and culture makes a real positive to the way that we work and live. So key finding number 1. The first finding was that kindness is not just a nice to have, it's now a leadership expectation. What do we mean by this? Well, the next generation of people coming into the workforce expect their leaders to be kind. It was okay in my generation when I started in the workforce to live in a command and control kind of setting with leaders who just told you what to do and you say, how high do you want me to jump? And you jump. That's not going to work with the next generation of people coming through. They expect their leaders to have empathy, emotional intelligence, to explain purpose and the rationale for their work, and to lean in and to lead with kindness as their leadership shadow, not as command and control. 70% of employees state that they are more engaged in workplaces where managers provide developmental support rather than that authoritative oversight. And 63% of employees in the UK specifically define kind leadership as one that prioritises transparency and open communication, whereas in some cultures, direct communication may be perceived as unkind. We recognise that this shift in expectation of the next generation of the workforce means that we, as leaders in our businesses, have to respond. We have to provide the type of management and leadership that creates the right type of environment for our employees and our teams to thrive and be successful. Interesting, the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated this shift toward a more holistic approach to employee well-being and leadership engagement, with 78% of employees expecting their leaders to demonstrate greater empathy and support. So reason number 1 is it's not just a nice to have anymore. This is an expectation that our teams have of all of us.
The second finding we had was that kind leadership drives performance, employee engagement, and therefore innovation. So Adrian talked about the expectation that our teams have on us, but there's also results coming from it. So we found in that high trust environments where there was psychological safety created by the leadership through open and honest conversations, employee productivity rose by up to 50%. That was really an astonishing finding for us. We also found that the psychological safety enabled by the kind leadership allowed for greater risk-taking, creativity, leading to higher rates of innovation and a 25% improvement in the problem-solving efficiency. That's incredible for all organisations. And I know all of you sitting there at home or in the workplace will have some really tough problems ahead of you to solve on behalf of your teams and behalf of your leadership that you're working with. So imagine being in an environment which is psychologically safe, where you'll be able to increase your capacity for that problem solving because you're working in a place where you've got that kind leadership and the high trust environment. That is really powerful.
Our third finding was the link between kindness and creating a bank of goodwill within all of your employees. A good example of that is for us during the pandemic, where we'd been treating our people and have this culture of kindness at the heart of our strategy. When we hit a really troubling time for our organisation, we asked for people to volunteer to take a 10% pay cut. 98.5% of our organisation volunteered to take a 10% pay cut to protect the organisation during that period of economic uncertainty. Now, after about 6 months of that, the market turned and we were able to pay that back to our staff. But that's a really good example of when you treat people with kindness, you create this emotional connection with them that when things are tough, they step up to the plate and help you out. Our research found that organisations with strong social capital recover 30% faster from economic downturns than those with weak stakeholder trust. We see that in our business today. One of the biggest measures we have around our employee engagement is obviously turnover, attrition in our business. Now, in the consulting industry, turnover runs around 30% per year. That's 30% of staff resigning from that organisation and moving around the industry. For Baringa, for the last 10 years, our average attrition is just 10% per year instead of 30%, which brings us massive advantage of holding on to our talented and loyal teams so that we can provide a better service to our customers and clients.
Our fourth finding is that kindness is critical for customer services. We found that the way employees are treated is mirrored in how they treat their customers, and customers can feel that. 74% of UK respondents say that they consider the way that the company behaves, i.e. how it feels to interact with them when deciding to make a purchase. And actually up to 50% of us here in the UK have refused to buy a product or service because they felt that the selling company was not kind. So that mirror effect is going from the leadership and the company through to their employees and then through to the customers. That was a really powerful finding for our private sector clients. I think it's also really important in the public sector because many of you will be interacting with citizens and service users on a daily basis. So how you interact with each other will show up in how those people are experiencing government services.
Our fifth and concluding finding was for all the doubters out there who considered that kindness was just a nice to have and not economically or commercially important. In our findings, we found that those organisations that had kindness at the heart of the organisation dramatically improved their economic performance over time. 47% of businesses who were identified as kind doubled their EBITDA growth over a 10-year period compared to just 32% of their unkind counterparts. That's a massive difference in terms of the economic performance of our organisations that we surveyed. You can see that that economic justification supports the other four findings, that when we get this right, it's not just a better organisation for our employees to be engaged, they're not just more innovative and solve problems quicker. It's also not just about influencing customer service, it actually impacts the bottom line. Success of organisations is drastically improved economically when kindness is at the heart of their culture.
I hope you enjoyed hearing about all of our research. Now we wanted to hand over to some of our clients to get some of their reflections on what kindness means to them and how they're putting it into practice in their organisations.
It'd be good to understand, actually, you've talked a lot about giving kindness almost into your stakeholder ecosystem. Where have you received kindness in return from that ecosystem?
Generally, it's reflected in people and people's attitudes. As I said, in the end, it's about your own attitude to yourself and to other people. But I remember times in my career where I've thought, oh, this is a problem. I remember many years ago when I was working with one of our power stations on a problem. I won't go into detail on it, but it involved exporting material to the USA. And it looked like that material was being rejected when it landed in New York. And I thought, oh dear, I'm in trouble now. I've made a catastrophic error. But my boss took me in his office and said, look, I know there's a problem here. Don't worry. We'll sort it out. And then we'll have a discussion afterwards about what happened. Now, in the event, nothing happened, but I never forgot that he didn't rant and rave. He didn't shout at me. That meant that I rewarded him with my loyalty going forward. And that's why I say, if you treat people in the right way, you receive it back with interest.
You can often use unprecedented, almost overuse unprecedented, but we are in unprecedented times at the moment. Do you see an economic environment and maybe a social environment where actually kindness is forced to take a bit of a back seat, or do you personally see it as being as important, if not more important than ever?
I don't think you can ever say that all of the things I've described as kindness, creating psychological space, treating people with decency, respect, being honest, listening to their point of view, allowing people to express themselves, I don't think that ever goes out of fashion. Of course, it becomes more difficult if the circumstances are difficult, but it becomes even more important to do it when the circumstances become more difficult.
Thank you. Just as a closing question then, are there kind of 3 top points that you could share in terms of when kindness becomes a real challenge and how to deal with it?
The most important thing, as I said, is when things get really difficult and you feel like, the walls are closing in from each side, you're facing challenges in every direction, it's even more important that you stop and take time to think about the situation, take an objective view, keep a cool head, make the right decisions by taking on board opinions. And, people may express opinions you don't like, but you nonetheless have to listen to it and then execute the decision once you've got the feedback in the right way, as I've said. And it's even more important when things are tough to ensure you do it in the right way, not less important.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed those videos. Now we thought we'd just turn our attention to, hopefully we've underscored the importance of getting kindness right culturally for our employees and for our organisations that we all work with. Now we want to just turn our attention to how do you put this into practice. So Sarah, I'm going to put you on the spot. How do you make kindness a reality in the teams and the clients that you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's answers which are kind of big things and small things. I'm going to start with some of the small things.
Okay, great.
There's a reminder to me that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen more. Kindness starts for me with listening, understanding where people are at, what are they struggling with, so that you can coach them to an answer, not necessarily tell them what to do. So listening is a really important part for me in kindness. And then there's some practical things, some of the things we do with our teams and with our clients when we're working with them. And that can be as simple as having a PowerPoint slide around how you like to work. When do you show up at your best? What happens when you're stressed? How do you like to receive feedback? We saw that it's an important part of kindness being tackling the tough challenges. Some people like that written down, some people like to have that discussed, some people like to have a combination. So just doing that contracting with your team about how you like to work and then how you're going to work really well together as a team, I think really allows kindness to come out in every day. What about you? You see the whole of Baringa. What are some of the things you like to see from a Baringa level?
Yeah, I think there's some responsibility that we have as leaders to create an environment that genuinely feels psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And I think one of the ways that I try to do that and that we try and do that as an organisation is be a little bit more humble and authentic. Show some vulnerabilities. Yeah. Show when I got that wrong, I'm really sorry. Can we try that again? And bring a little bit of my personal life and feelings into work and about sharing stuff that's going on at home with my kids and building rapport on a more human level that establishes a basis of kind of friendship and trust. That means then when we're dialing up the work focus, people know that we're in this together, it's a psychologically safe environment and that we're on the same team. So some of those things I think set a really nice tone within the organisation and within the culture.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I speak to lots of government clients who are working in this massive level of uncertainty everywhere. And I guess we see it with all of our clients. And then they were talked to me about, well, how do I navigate through that? How do I drive change in all of this uncertainty? So that vulnerability and the fact that nobody knows all of the answers is really resonates with many of the leaders that I speak to, as well as that context setting all of the time. This is what we know now. And we don't know all of the different information. Really creates that kind of sense of psychological safety where you could take measured risks to drive things forward.
Yeah, and I love your point about 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
One of the ways I try to put that into practice is when I'm with the team is to ask them more questions than I'm telling. So that command and control kind of style of the 1980s and 90s is definitely behind us. Now when I go into leadership sessions and with the team, I'm thinking, what questions can I ask that will elicit the information we need together in order to move things forward? So definitely more questions and less tell.
Yeah, lots of what and how questions rather than why are we doing this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? It's a journey for all of us to work on. Now, tell me a little bit about your personal experience, has anybody ever given you great kindness or created that great psychologically safe environment around you?
Well, it's really interesting. We often bump into people at work and you see them on the way into the office and they say, "Oh, how you doing?" And there's a superficial answer to that question. "Yeah, I'm fine." Or I normally just say, "I'm busy, good but busy." But when I says, "No, how are you really doing?"
Yeah.
When someone actually just takes the time to just push through the superficial and actually say, "Yeah, but it must be quite tough the last couple of weeks. How are you really doing?"
Yeah.
And they slow the conversation down. They genuinely care and ask that kind of question. That's when I feel a bit more seen and a bit safer to actually share, "Yeah, actually, this is really challenging. Could you help me think through how we approach X or Y?" Is a really good way to break through that kind of busyness drumbeat that we all live by, and to slow it down and say, "No, but how are you really doing?" Someone had this great phrase. They said to me, "Yeah, but if you were a weather system, what kind of weather are you living in at the moment? Is it sunshine all the time, or are there a few clouds? What are your clouds?" And it got me thinking about, yeah, how am I doing? So people who ask good questions of me helps me feel settled and able to perform at my best.
Yeah, I think the weather analogy is really good, or asking people, how are you feeling? And everyone says fine. So sort of like, they're on a scale out of 10, or if you're a Taylor Swift song, or you shake it out, or you something really miserable. And it's all of those kinds of bits of humour to create the vulnerability, which, as we saw in all of our research, really drives great improvements in productivity and ultimately in shareholder value.
It's actually quite simple, isn't it? Because I think what we're talking about is being good human to human level friendships that then establish trust, that then establish that safety for us all to do the best that we can in the workplace.
Yeah, and that is actually, we've all got a part to play in that. It's not something which happens elsewhere. And I know it's really important for us in Baringa, that sense of ownership. There isn't a thing called Baringa making Baringa kind.
Yeah.
It's all of us showing up to be more humble, to listen more to all of our colleagues at every level, to make our whole organisation better.
Yeah, one by one, we can all make a difference.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot about what we've done in Baringa and heard from some of our other clients. But what we really wanted to make sure was that for all of you, it really resonated with what's happening in the public sector. So I went and spoke to Trisha Hayes, who's the ex-second Perm Secretary from the Home Office, about what kindness meant to her and how she's seen it through her civil service career.
So for me, the concepts of leadership and kindness are intricately linked. If you're not being kind, you're probably not being a leader at all. But leading with kindness means leading in the interests of everyone that's putting their trust in you, partly because that's the right thing to do, but also partly because that's the way to get the best results. So I've done a lot of different kinds of job in my career. I've dealt with some pretty difficult situations, some crisis management, when there were issues with terrorist attacks on aviation or dealing with the COVID crisis. And through all of that, what I've found is that leading with kindness, even in the most stressful situations, is the way to get the job done best. That doesn't mean not being decisive, and it doesn't mean not moving at pace, but it means taking people with you in doing the things that you need to do. Let me tell you a little story. About 10 years ago, my youngest son managed to break both his legs in a sporting event. Now, at the time, I was doing a very big job, an international job, very fast paced, but I just needed to get my son to school and to help him get through his day. So I said to my boss, a woman called Lucy Chadwick, "How can we make this work together?" And she said to me, "We'll do whatever it takes together, Trisha." And we did. And we got the job done, and we achieved brilliant results for the UK. And you know what? At that time, I would have walked through fire for that woman. And I still would. And I think that's where kindness gets you, unquestioning loyalty and a sense of being one team to get the job done. So for me, kind leadership always started with getting to know my colleagues on a human level, not just as people who did tasks. I used to have a rule that within the first week of having a new direct report, I would understand 3 things about them: where they lived, what their domestic situation was, and one thing that really meant something to them that was nothing to do with work. That may sound a little bit intrusive, but I definitely find that in the small number of situations where I couldn't know those three things, there was less warmth, there was less trust between us, and between us, we tended to do a slightly less good job. I absolutely have seen consequences of not being a kind leader. I was a civil servant for a really long time, and in the civil service, one of our core values is to be able to give fearless advice based on evidence. And there were definitely times back in the day where, in the absence of kind leadership, I felt that I had to self-censor or maybe go into a room trying to manage the situation rather than solve the problem. And that wasn't a good thing for anybody. So being a kind at work, some of it's pretty micro. It's about taking an interest in the people around you, asking open questions, not being afraid to challenge where a room feels uncomfortable and understand what's really going on. I think everybody can do these things, and if everybody does them well, then that makes the workplace a much better, safer, more creative and more productive place for absolutely everyone.
Thanks, Trisha. It's always so insightful to hear all of that experience and how it really feels in the public sector. So I really hope you've enjoyed hearing what our definition of kindness was, what some of the findings were, and found some bits which really resonated with you. I'm now really delighted to join you for a Q&A session, and perhaps we can talk about how practically should we all take this forward in our day-to-day lives.
Sarah, lovely to meet you. And yeah, thanks for a really interesting session. I really liked the bit right at the beginning about when you said about being kind is not about being nice. I like that description of it's got some grit.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really important to us that kindness just wasn't very fluffy and didn't have the necessarily grit is exactly the right word behind the definition. So we definitely thought long and hard about what was the definition, and it wasn't just, we all know that actually being in a workplace where everyone's high-fiving each other all the time saying you've done a great job even when you haven't is disingenuous and doesn't build the outcomes that we were looking to achieve.
And I loved the bit at the end, the quote at the end from if you're not being kind, you're not being a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think leadership is in all of us at every level in our careers. We're all leaders in the different areas that we work in. It's not something which is reserved for people at the top. You know, that doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, Trisha is very wise. And yeah, if you're not being able to display some of that kindness to your team, you're not being the leader that we all need you to be.
Thank you. That's so, Sarah. We've got a few questions coming in from the audience now. So what I'm going to do is I'll read out the question. So question one, it's okay to make safe spaces, but the problem is where people do this and then just opt back to dictatorial role so that the action and practices don't actually kind of replicate. It's almost like, yeah, don't replicate the treatment. How can we help address this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because kindness is not a one and done thing. It's something that you have to keep working at all of the time. So that kind of slip back definitely happens all of the time. What would I recommend to doing that? I think it's really important. We talked a little bit about some of that sort of contracting when you're first working with people, explaining, well, this is how I like to work. What do I know about you? And that makes it easier to call out some of those behaviours when they're slipping back. We all know that sometimes we are tired and sulky and sometimes we are not the best version of ourselves. So we've got a kind of a job to help each other be the better version. And by building some of that rapport, some of that safe space already, I think that gives you license to say, do you know what? I think that wasn't how we all said that we wanted to work with each other. Did you know that when you do that, because of lots of different things which are happening outside, this is the impact that it has? So calling out that behaviour is a really important point of being kindness. I absolutely recognise that it's not a one and done thing. It's something you have to just keep working on as a team.
Yeah, it's more than a policy, isn't it? It's
absolutely
it's ongoing.
It's a way of being, a way of working.
Yes, yeah. It's so interesting for me because there's a couple of other sessions that I've done the Q&A for this week where there's been so much overlap. So there was a session on Monday on psychological safety where there's, so much overlap.
Yeah, absolutely.
So question 2, please can you share some easy ways we can embed ways of kindness into every day and encourage others to do the same?
Yeah, I love it. I love this question. Easy ways, because if something was too difficult, we're all really busy and it's really hard to incorporate those new habits. We all know it takes time to embed habits. So I would always say, almost start with yourself. Okay, what am I going to do to get myself in a good headspace to be the kind leader that I want to be? Is that I need to get up and doom scroll in the morning? Spoiler, I think that's probably not it. But is there something I need to do? A couple of minutes of meditation? Do I need to listen to upbeat music? For me, it's definitely about listening to upbeat music on the way to work. So think about what are the things which make you be personally in a better frame of mind to bring that kindness into the workplace. Who are you going to hang out with? What are you going to listen to? What are you going to read? And then I think that enables you to come to the workplace with many more ideas and bring your best self to work, to sit around with your team. And to Trisha's point, make sure you understand a little bit about what's happening out beyond the job with everybody that you work with. So I'm always telling everybody I've got 3 teenagers, so I quite often tell people about that, and people can empathise or go, that's just absolutely crazy. So and you need to be able to share that about yourself. You can't just, what's happening with you, without sharing anything about yourself. So be willing to be a bit vulnerable. One of the things we like to do in Baringa is we've got a template which is called our ways of working template. So we fill that in when we work in new teams, both internally and with our clients, which talk again a little bit about ourselves, and that gives us a process or a system for enabling some of that understanding to happen. So I think all of those things are just easy and simple things to build in different habits.
So yeah, thinking about how you're showing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it conscious.
Yeah, in the workplace. And then I suppose it's about what you're talking about it's about being conscious about stuff, isn't it? Like asking people, or like having that thing about how do you like to work or whatever. Yeah. So it's all very a conscious act.
Yeah, I think there's a great phrase which is be yourself with more skill. So I don't think in this we're asking people to change themselves, but just be yourself about when are you at your best, that you're most kind, and work on that as a skill set. And I definitely say you're sometimes going to get it wrong, and you're going to have to hold your hands up and get it wrong. And you'll find that you can generate great kindness in the workplace by just sharing when you get it wrong. So I have actually today done a big presentation with one of my teams in Baringa, and as you can see, I'm sniffing. I've got a bit of a cold, and I've had quite a big week. And I just have to say to my team, I'm really excited to be here with you all today, but I'm not feeling the very best version of myself. And so just sharing that bit of vulnerability allowed some of them to say, sometimes I don't feel like my best self at work, and this is what happens. And I think that makes the workplace a better and more productive workplace.
Yeah, and thank you to you for showing up here today when it's not your best day, but really appreciate it when you're not feeling at your best. And I feel like there's a theme about the kindness, which is about kind of allowing vulnerability in yourself and in others.
Yeah, definitely.
As well. That thing that we talked about in the session about how are you doing? How are you really? How are you?
Yeah, I love that kind of weather analogy that Adrian used, because it's very easy to say fine. We must all say I'm fine to 10, 15 people a day. So lean into how are you actually really feeling, and be prepared to tell people how you're feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about that in a session I was delivering yesterday, and I was saying about how, encouraging people to think, maybe don't ask how are you doing so much unless you actually want to hear. You want to hear the answer.
Yeah, because people know that you don't want to hear it. They're like, oh, I'm just rushing past you. I'm asking you how you are. I don't actually care because I'm just rushing past.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question, Sarah. So we've got, what can we do when being kind or being empathetic towards people is seen as a weakness rather than as a strength?
Yeah. And so that was at the root of some of our research, actually. So we knew that being kindness was really powerful in Baringa as our organisation. And we heard from our clients that they liked working with us because we displayed many traits of being kind. But we were like, does this really have an economic edge to it? So if you think about Baringa, we work with big banks and other private sector clients, and so we want to say, oh, is there something in that for them as well? And that's why we went and did the research. And so we are now we are very firmly believe that it's not seen as a weakness because it has real economic benefits. We saw in some of our research that it has a 25% increase in productivity and innovation. Well, I think everybody needs a more productive and a more innovative workforce. Some of the research we found around the leadership expectations, that our employees expect kind leadership. So one of the things I would say is take some of the kind of hard numbers from some of the research, and you'll be able to find other similar but different research available to share that with people. Like, this is not a weakness. This is actually a business imperative, and by business I mean and service development imperative. There isn't anything, we believe, which is more important to getting some of the problems that as a country, as a society, and we live in this very turbulent time, fixed. So that's why we wanted to find some of the hard research, and the finding between the growth in companies based on whether they were perceived to be kind or unkind was really powerful for us, and definitely made some of our clients who said this is all very fluffy go, oh, this is actually very interesting. You know, we can see why this is important for our business. So that's what we would encourage.
Yeah, so disseminate the evidence about why being kind isn't a weakness.
Yeah, it's not just a nice to have. You know, there's a real economic edge to it, and hence we called our campaign the economics of kindness, not just it's a good thing to do. It makes everyone feel better.
Thank you for that. So Sarah, I've actually just realised this next question actually relates back to question 2, which was about embedding ways and kindness. So it's quite a long one. So it's from somebody who says, I work in the asylum support team where we're actively trying to embed a culture of kindness. I work in the asylum support team, and where we're actively trying to embed a culture of kindness, the support has been overwhelming. Our recent survey showed that 60% of respondents believe kindness is needed in our work. How can we ensure kindness remains a central and lasting part of our culture rather than becoming a temporary initiative that fades over time?
Yeah, and actually I'm really lucky that Baringa do some work with some of the asylum teams in the Home Office. So I know a little bit about the work that this team is doing, and it's so right, isn't it, that kindness is needed in the work that team are doing, and I'm delighted that they've embedded that on their journey and that they're seeing some of those results in their 60%. I haven't got a silver bullet for how do you make sure that it remains a central part of your culture. It's doing it all the time. It's talking about it all of the time. It's spending time in your team meetings going, okay, is there anything more we could be doing to embed kindness in our work here? What would that look like? What would it look like if we went 4 steps further on our journey? So it's a little and often approach, but well done to the team in the Home Office who have embedded kindness in such an important service.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the things like you're suggesting, like having a regular item on a meeting on a meeting agenda where you're actually kind of highlighting it.
Yeah, and just taking the time to give yourself, you know, we all work in these very busy jobs, and so just taking time to kind of pause, slow down and go, well, what's the bright spot that we've got around here at the moment, remembering all of the good stuff that is being done. And I know that can be enormously difficult when you've got pressure after pressure coming down, but I would encourage everyone to just take a bit of time, pause and say, we've done some really good things, and what else can we do, or should we just keep going with these things because they're delivering us loads of dividends. So build that into some of your team meetings and teams chats.
Thank you. So Sarah, the next one we've got is, how do you approach colleagues who may not initially embrace the idea of kindness in the workplace?
I guess that's kind of back to some of those stats. What I like about our research is that it's quite comprehensive around lots of different areas. So if you have colleagues who say, well, I don't want to embrace kindness because I don't believe that it's needed as a leadership. It's needed as a leadership expectation. I don't believe that bit of kindness. That's fine for you to disagree with some of the research, but we had so many different aspects of our research. We hoped that for most of our clients, they could find something which they said, well, that resonates for me. So for some of our clients who have enormous customer contact centers, the research around, well, how it feels to be a customer on the receiving end of the service based on how you are as an employee experience kindness really resonated. They were like, yes. Oh, okay, we definitely want our customers to have an amazing experience when they interact with us. And this research is saying that actually that will depend on how our teams are feeling, whether they feel that there's some kindness. Okay, I can get on board with that. So I think for us, it's about picking the bits of research which helps those colleagues. And of course, delving into some of the questions. Why do you not want to embrace kindness? Why is that such a difficult concept? And you'll always find some interesting nuggets of truth beneath those questions when you explore them, I expect.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I thought that was so powerful, that thing that came out in your presentation about how the impact of the kindness in the workplace on then the customers or the users of the service, in terms of that being reflected in the way that they were treated.
Yeah, really powerful. We expected there might be a link, but to find such a kind of powerful link, we were like, wow, that is really, really important for all businesses to be thinking about.
Laura's just shared a couple of comments. Well, I'll come back to questions in a second, but there's obviously lots of chat going on with participants here. One's here, kindness makes you and the person you have shown kindness to feel better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another one, if someone's kind to you when you are at your lowest, you remember that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, isn't that true? I think both Adrian and Mike Lewis and Trisha spoke about that, when people have been kind to you when you've been at your lowest. And maybe that's a good strategy to work with your colleagues who are saying, well, I don't believe, I don't want to embrace this, to get them to have a think about, when did you experience some kindness, and what difference did it make? You absolutely remember it forever, and you are really grateful to that person, and you go and deliver brilliant work for them because you remember how they treated you when it was difficult.
Yeah, I mean, Trisha said, didn't she, I would walk through fire for her.
Yeah, isn't that a powerful metaphor? And I expect we can all think of people who showed us kindness at your lowest moments. I definitely had somebody that I worked with a little while ago when I had 3 very young children, and it was really challenging. And she was amazing at just saying, you need to just go and look after what's happening at home, and then you can come back at work. And and that now my children are old, so that must have been a good 15, 16, 17 years ago. And yeah, I'm the same as Trisha. I'd still walk over hot coals for that lady.
Yeah, amazing, really. Okay, so we've got another question which is really linked to the last question, but what strategies have you found effective in encouraging them to, this is people, I mean, I think you've probably partly answered this actually, but this is about talking about the people that maybe don't want to embrace kindness in the workplace, and what strategies you found effective in encouraging them to come along on the journey and adopt a more optimistic mindset. I mean, obviously, you've kind of talked about that a bit, but I don't know if there's anything that you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think the thing I'd add is that it might take time. So don't kind of feel defeated. Work hard, be the change that you want to be the ambassador for that, and therefore treat those people who don't want to come on that journey with some kindness as well. I think it's quite difficult to be like, you must be kind in quite a dictatorial way. That doesn't work really. So treat those people with some kindness, keep going, as we've talked about a little bit already, be curious, like what's underneath that. Find some different what and how questions. What don't you like about being kindness? How do you think it would be worse if we were kinder to each other? And see what's there.
Yeah, and I guess we never know, do we, what's kind of in people's backgrounds and life experiences, and what experience they've had of, or what, if any, experience they've had of people being kind.
Yeah, I think that's
then
true.
The messages, that the intrinsic messages that they've kind of grown up with.
Yeah, and that has reminded me about something in our research, which we didn't talk a lot about in this presentation, is that some of the aspects we talked about, being kind, about being honest, they translate different in different cultures. So, you know, it's important to remember that there might be a different cultural overlay in some of what kindness means. So that kind of sharing and asking people a bit about what's happening outside of work, for some people that is really difficult for lots of different reasons. So it's about working out the right way. So be mindful of that as well.
Yes, I mean, it's all very complex. It's all very complex, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, okay, we've got a question here, which is, was there anything in the research about how kindness between people has been getting lost, especially in recent years?
So we didn't actually do, we've run that research once. We are due to run some of the research again. So we haven't got any statistical evidence on that at the moment. So we will have a look at that. I know it can certainly feel like kindness between people has been getting lost, and we're living in a world where it's a bit easier to create division rather than cohesion. So I'm optimistic that we can all, if we all make a difference, we can kind of drive towards a more of an optimistic future for all of us. But no, sorry, we didn't do any research on that basis.
Thank you. And the next one we've got is, do you think there's any evidence of the cruel to be kind phrase for people to justify certain treatments of others? You know, we did it because we know it's cruel to be kind.
So I think there's something about, for us, for kindness is about, as we said, kind of, it wasn't about being nice, it was about being honest with people. So that for us meant if somebody in Baringa wasn't ready for promotion, well, then we should tell them that, not to say to them you're not going to be promoted, but to help them get better and to help them understand. You could say, they might explain that as being cruel to be kind. We don't want you to be promoted and not be successful at the next level. That's in nobody's interest. But I guess I'm not that keen on that kind of phraseology, because I think it does give people the opportunity to think that they can get away with kind of doing anything, rather than, no, we're actually trying to make it better for the other individual, and what's the honest thing that they need to hear.
Yes, I mean, I think from what you're saying is the focus on openness and honesty, rather than using the terminology cruel, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got a lovely comment in here. I agree that kindness is important to display both in the workplace and in life. It shows emotional intelligence and helps us to deal with challenges in a more open and sympathetic way when they arise.
Yeah, great comment. That's absolutely true, isn't it? We could all do with being more emotionally intelligent, but yeah, both in your workplace and in your life. I love that comment.
Yes, yeah. I mean, at the moment, I haven't got any more. I mean, here we've got another question just jumped into the Q&A, Sarah. If you could give us one thing to take away, to go and do, to be kind, what would that be?
I've probably spoken about most of these. I would start with yourself, actually. You know, what do you need to be a kind leader? Because it's very much that put your own gas mask on the plane. Now, I think it takes resilience, and it takes wells of courage to sometimes be kind, and therefore making sure that you've stocked up your own kindness levels so that you can go and spread it in the world would be probably one of the things that I would start with straight away.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been really interesting Q&A. I can see that I think Laura may be about to put another, yes, here we are, another comment in, which I'll just read out. Cruel to be kind, in inverted commas, may sound pragmatic, but in practice it often erodes trust, safety and connection, the very foundations of a kind culture. True kindness isn't about avoiding hard truths. It's about delivering them with compassion, clarity and care.
Yeah, what a great trio at the end there. Compassion, clarity and care. Yeah, I couldn't agree more that using those three things together to deliver the hard truths will really enable a kind culture and better outcomes.
Yes, yes, yes. It sounds like people in the audience are really understanding and kind of getting behind this. And we have one more question. Does the word kindness or kind need to be reviewed?
I think there's definitely lots of different definitions of kindness, and one of the things I would encourage you to do is, if you're talking about having a kind culture with the teams that you're working with, making sure that you're all on the same page about what kindness is. Sometimes people think kindness is sending each other cards all of the time and being really nice. For us, it definitely wasn't that, but I do respect that people have different kindness, because there can be some confusion in that.
Yes, I was just thinking about, you talk about people's different language of love, don't you? In terms of some people kind of are very verbal, or some people want to do things, and I guess that may be the same in kindness.
Yeah, that's a great dimension to it. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
But I think what's come through really clearly from you is that the being kind is about being very open and honest and transparent.
Yeah,
I guess,
absolutely,
as well. Okay, so another question here. Do you think that kindness is the key to happiness?
Wow, that is a big question, isn't it, for me on a Friday lunchtime? I don't know. I think I don't know if I can answer that. I think, but for me, kindness gives me a massive sense of fulfillment. It makes me enjoy my work much more. So it's definitely a key component to my happiness. But I know everyone has a slightly different definition of happiness. So I don't know that it would be key, but for me, it's an important part of my my happiness, and I hope that of my teams and the people that I work with.
Yeah, an important part, but not necessarily the whole.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for your time today, and for the really interesting session. I think it's given us all a lot of food for thought.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to join you all, and I hope that you can use some of the research with your more sceptical colleagues and those of you on that journey to kindness. Appreciate that so much. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sarah. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.